Chers collègues, je vous...
Colleagues, can I suggest that we get started again, please? It'll be good news, I think, to hear that this is the last item on our agenda this morning. So this is the report of our most recent mission to Bangladesh, which took place last week. I'd like to thank the 4 colleagues who participated with me in this mission, namely Isabel for the EPP, Mr. Molazic for ECR, Mr. Payet for Renew, and Katerina for the Greens EFA. I would also like to warmly thank the Ambassador of the European Union in Dhaka, Mr. Miller, and his entire team for their hospitality and hard work in helping us to achieve the objectives of our mission. Our mission had a twofold objective, firstly to support the reform agenda currently being put in place by the interim government, and also to promote a central role for human rights issues in the development of relations between Bangladesh and the European Union in a context of democratic transition. In addition, we were keen to take advantage of our stay in the country to focus on the too often forgotten situation of the Rohingya refugees who, persecuted by the Myanmar junta, had to flee in their hundreds of thousands from their country to seek refuge in Bangladesh. That nearly 8 years ago now. So we went to Cox's Bazar in the south of the country, where the largest refugee camp in the world is located. Now, whilst we welcome the work that's been done to uphold human rights by the interim government, we do recognise that there are still challenges in a certain number of areas, and we've expressed our support to the work that's been done by the Bangladeshi civil society. Finally, we were also able to see firsthand the alarming and disastrous conditions that are suffered by the Rohingya people in the refugee camp, and our visits to those camps have stepped up our collective belief that this question should be treated with determination and urgency, and the European Parliament has to find the resources and ensure that the situation of the Rohingya people does not go forgotten and is put back on the agenda, on the political agenda of the European Union. But without further ado, I'd now like to hand over to the members that have participated in this mission, and the first speaker will be Isabel. Thank you. I would also like to thank our Droit team and the team on the Dhaka side who undertook formidable work to help us to better understand the situation on the ground. The first point that I'd like to raise is that in a world where democracy is being pushed back in quite a dramatic way, this country, nevertheless, demonstrates that it is possible to go in a different direction, to choose another path. They're really trying to overhaul their democracy and undergo a transition towards democracy. We really need to hope that these elections will be held and that they won't be contested. They will take place as they should, and how they're seeking to ensure that they are carried out. And that's what we've seen with the interim government. They've indicated that that's what they really are striving for. So it was a very positive mission on that side. And then on the other side of the mission, Chair, you've already talked about this. The idea was to visit the Rohingya refugee camps. And it is tough when you go to a camp where there are more or less more than 1 million people living there, the largest refugee camp in the world, and all of the challenges that that entails. It's the neighbouring country of Myanmar that took these refugees in. And as you've already said, Chair, other conflicts such as Ukraine and its neighbouring countries, the critical situation that we see in Gaza, all of that means that the Rohingya are often forgotten, and that's not acceptable. Just because we have other conflicts appearing around the world, that doesn't mean that we should forget about their cause, those who continue to live in the situation they're in, where you can't actually see the end of the tunnel, the way forward, and that's very serious because that means there's no future for them. They're living in these camps without any prospect of finding a solution to their situation because Myanmar doesn't accept its responsibilities and it won't allow them to come back, and you're dealing with a very poor country, of course, as they say themselves, and that they can't take them in, even though they have a large population. They can't take in all of these refugees and integrate them into that region, which furthermore is a poor region in of itself. So another challenge as regards the situation of the Rohingya people, but another very positive note is that the country is undertaking huge efforts to transition towards democracy. So that gave us cause for hope. I think it was really encouraging for all of the members who participated in the mission, and a very positive takeaway, the road to democracy. We need to keep that in mind. Thank you. Thank you, Isabel. Mr. Mulazik, you have the floor.
Dziękuję. Będę mówił również po polsku.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll speak Polish. I wanted to echo and endorse the thanks to the Secretariat, all of the people who prepared this very complex and challenging mission. I wanted once again to explicitly thank them because it wasn't an easy trip. It wasn't any old European Parliament mission. It was a difficult one. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for the efforts that you undertook. And also I can echo what Isabel said on everything that you said. And I wanted to draw your attention to one more thing, to the Rohingya population. The Muslim world, but also India, has turned its backs on their future. And I was very struck by the fact that the largest aid donor in those camps was European states, the European Union, it was the US before. And there's very little commitment from Muslim states, and that is quite surprising, frankly. In this context, I would suggest that we perhaps should write a note about this, a letter to Representative Kaya Kalas, so that she can raise that issue when she enters into dialogue with the representatives from the Muslim countries, because it's just not acceptable to have a humanitarian catastrophe of this extent in that part of the world. And you have the situation where the Muslim world is turning its back on that situation, and it falls to the member states of the European Union to deal with it. That's not really the right approach. We are very far-flung. We are far away from the Muslim world. So I think that the Muslim states should be the major stakeholders in their region, and they do need to tackle this issue, and perhaps we need to tackle it in our dialogue with India too, because we're negotiating an agreement with India at the moment, and perhaps this issue should also be brought up with contact and outreach with other countries in Muslim Asian countries or Gulf states, so that they can help to resolve this issue and channel humanitarian aid to the people who unfortunately live in these camps and who are experiencing a situation where they've no prospect of seeing the situation get better, or they can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So that's where the initiative came from on our side. But I think as a DWA committee and as a member of this delegation, we could send a letter to the European Commission or to the High Representative for the External Action Service so that they can raise this issue. Thank you.
Monsieur Payet.
Mr. Payet could not be here. Sorry for that. So, Katerina, you have the floor.
I would like to start by thanking the DROIT Secretariat, the EU delegation, and the colleagues for participating and organizing this mission. As it was said, it was tremendous work and it was really well organized, and we were able to have very fruitful exchanges over 3 long days. With civil society, with human rights defenders, with youth representatives, with political parties, with the interim government. It was really comprehensive, and this wouldn't have been possible without the effort of many colleagues, so my thanks goes to them. And like my colleagues, I'll also speak in 2 points, because it almost felt like 2 missions. So first of all, on political developments on Bangladesh itself, it is clear that Bangladesh is in a pivotal moment in its history, and it's really an opportunity for meaningful progress. We see that elections might be approaching very soon, and we heard from across the board widespread calls for transparent, inclusive, and credible democratic processes. And these demands came not only from the political actors, but also from the students, from the youth movements, and from the civil society that we spoke with. I was very encouraged to see that after the uprising, dialogue was very much possible, and that this happened both with institutions of the interim government, but also at the grassroots level, and there was active engagement from all parts, including the youth, which is a really positive sign. However, regrettably, it must be said that minorities, LGBTQI groups, religious minorities, indigenous communities, but also not a minority, but women, were sometimes not as present in the process as they should have been. So that's definitely an improvement point for the future of shaping the Bangladesh society, of course. I believe that the European Union can play a constructive role by supporting democratic structures, encouraging the reforms, and standing in solidarity with those who are working for a better future for Bangladesh. And our visit, I guess, this first half of the visit summarized would be, in a world of democratic backlash, there's really reason for hope, and a lot more needs to happen, and with support of the international community, we think Bangladesh can take significant steps forward. So it's now up to the interim government, but especially for the political parties, to show their commitment and implementation of the reforms and move forward in a peaceful manner. Then secondly, as the colleagues also mentioned, the situation in Cox's Bazar in the refugee camps. I was deeply moved, as many of us were. I was deeply alarmed as well by the humanitarian crisis of the Rohingya community. The reality is really grim. We saw firsthand the consequences of cuts in humanitarian aid. We saw what food rations would look like if they're reduced, as they are in danger of being. We saw cuts in the access to education for children, in the access to cultural activities or safe spaces for women, community building, things that are important on themselves, but also provide a sense of security and hope and a life to live for people who have been there stagnated for 8 years. So to see that all be endangered was extremely painful. And the European Union must step up and take the lead, continue to do the donor role, but also take political leadership and political coordination and advocacy for these issues. To close, I hope to work with colleagues here in the European Parliament, with the Droit Secretariat and with the European Commission in follow-up on all of these issues, because I think we came back with a suitcase full of projects and things to work on, and lots of engagement we can have towards Bangladesh, towards humanitarian aid, towards Myanmar. So lots of things ahead, and I hope that we can all follow up on it together and support democratic reforms, protecting human rights offenders, and addressing the humanitarian crisis.
Merci à vous trois.
Thank you to all three of you. Of course, I can echo what my colleagues said, and I also want to thank the Secretariat for both the preparation in the lead-up to the mission, but also during the mission, because there were two Secretariat members present with us, and their support and contributions was really valuable. So thank you very much, and a special dedication to the people who accompanied us on the mission. I also share what you said, colleagues. I just wanted to reiterate the context of the timing and congratulate you as coordinators for the choice, the sensible and efficient choice of doing these missions before we deepen relations between third countries and the European Union. We also have the whole discussion on deepening the partnership agreement between Bangladesh and the EU. The report should reach the European Parliament when the negotiations are finished in the upcoming months, and I think that we'll be clearer about what the European Parliament's position should be because of that. So, Mr. Mulazik, I don't know if you noted, but next Tuesday there is a discussion in New York at the UN on the situation of the particular circumstances and scandalous situation of the Rohingya people. I hope to have an exchange, and plan to have an exchange with our EU ambassador, and we're going to try and have an exchange on the telephone, and I will pass on everything that you've said here and what you said during the mission too. Let's see how this meeting goes next Tuesday. One thing is certain, that based on our faith in multilateralism and the fact that the US is going to cut off a third of its funding in the next month, then we're going to have to rethink what other donors are going to do. And the EU needs to be at the helm of that, and it needs to really play a leading role. We need to stop... We should never stop talking about the situation of the Rohingya people. It's something that we really need to keep at the forefront of our minds. Have a good lunch, everybody. And the good news is that we won't be coming back until 3 p.m. So you've got plenty of time to have a nice long lunch and relax, perhaps a little bit of work, and then we'll meet back here at 3.